Piece by piece, I'm whittling my way through the unfinished business checklist, and today, we've got a familiar but kind of complex set of games. If you've been around the channel for a really long time, then you already know I like a rhythm game from time to time. I covered Frequency and Amplitude, Rock Revolution, the Japanese exclusive Guitar Freak series, I haven't done Drum Mania, but I did Guitar Freaks, and I can't forget the game that pushed me to use a bunch of copyrighted music, Rock of the Dead. But a lot later on, after all of that stuff, I eventually managed to make my way to Guitar Hero 1 through 3, and that is a long eventually. And I think now I'm long overdue again for some more of that in my life, so today we're going to take a look at Guitar Hero 4 through 6. I've been excited to get back to this, so no more waiting, let's just get started. Guitar Hero World Tour, developed by Neversoft and published by Activision and Red Octane in 2008, is the first Guitar Hero in the series to expand beyond guitar and into a bunch of other instruments. Just to throw it out there, I'm playing the PS2 version because it's the one I'm the most familiar with, but this game also came out on the Wii, Xbox 360, PS3, and PC. 1 year prior to this, the studio behind the creation of Guitar Hero, Harmonix, would go on to publish Rock Band, which really was the groundwork for a lot of what happened here. I'm not gonna say that any of these ideas are original regardless though. Guitar Hero was spawned from the idea of localizing Guitar Freaks. In the same realm, Konami had been publishing Drum Mania for years by this point, and that pioneered the drums idea. The vocals are almost literally a rip from Karaoke Revolution, which, again, came from Konami. So what we have here is essentially an amalgamation of ideas taken directly from Konami games and spun into a Guitar Hero skin. No complaints here, that definitely doesn't mean it's bad, I just want to give credit where it's due. We don't get some of the best Konami rhythm games over here in the West. Just to play Gitadora, you've got to navigate a ton of Japanese web pages. I think we should light some fire under their asses, man. Bring Gitadora to the West. Guitar Hero and Rock Band are gone. There's an open market space just like waiting for Konami to capitalize. What are we doing out here? The career mode here is a breakaway from the previous games. Instead of a solid set list per stadium that you unlock by set, there are now multiple set list posters, and the idea is to play the whole thing in one sitting. Some of them are short, some of them are long, and then the last few are really fucking long. You don't have to play each poster in order. There are usually multiple sets available at one time, which is both a nice change and kind of annoying. On the one hand, it's nice to be given some freedom of choice. On the other hand, not having choice gave me a sense of direction. Like, I like the World Tour sets, I just have to take some time to look at them and be like, yeah, I feel like playing that one right now. Whereas before, the idea was just go song by song and I didn't have to think about it. That in turn means World Tour has a lot of moments where I'm like, none of this looks good, I don't want to keep playing, and that's not so great. Truth be told, none of it is bad. This game has some of my favorite songs from the series, but it's nowhere near as clean and iconic as Guitar Hero 2 or 3. I can remember maybe a third of this set list at any given time. Where the previous two, I can remember almost the entirety of them both, minus the bonus songs. There are 86 songs in total, and every single one of them is a master recording, so the charm of having covers is gone, but the quality and cleanliness has improved a lot. Unlike the previous games in the series, there's no set band that you tour with. The band is made up of parts from the character customization. There's also a new inclusion here. In previous entries, you just picked one of the many available rockers and you got to work. Here, there's a ton of customization options available, and in true Neversoft fashion, you can really go wild with how you design yourself, including guitars down to the pickups. Overall, not my favorite career, but still excellent, and Neversoft really threw it down with all of the customizing. There are enough improvements to outweigh the shortcomings. The gameplay is bigger, so I'll touch on a little of everything, but to get started, the guitar and bass portion of the game is almost identical to the predecessors with a couple of tweaks and some inclusions. The idea for rhythm games like this is just as universal as the career structure for tech fantasy games. A song is charted to notes that move along a highway, and when the notes are inside of the hit window, you play them. That's the core in all of it. In this case, we've got double and triple notes, split notes, long notes, hammer-ons and pull-offs, note bending via whammy bar, and the return of star power like usual. On the newer side of things, this was the first game in the series to introduce tap it. When notes are transparent, you don't have to strum the guitar to play them. The intention is for you to just tap the fret buttons in the same way you would do real tapping on a regular guitar. Gotta throw it out there, I've played a fucking ton of Clone Hero, and the tap window in that game is extremely lenient. Here, the tap window is much smaller, but it's not the most uncomfortable thing in the world. It's just more challenging, which isn't a bad thing. To touch on some smaller detail, one of the best and most useful mechanics in the whole series was introduced here. When you pause and unpause during a song, a little countdown timer will play before the song starts again. It's just enough time for you to get your fingers back to where they belong if you have to get up and walk away like I have to do pretty often. As a matter of convenience, this is easily one of the best things a rhythm game can do for the players. Yes, I see it being easily exploitable, but even if it's cut down to just once or twice a song, that's still better than not having any forgiveness at all for having an emergency. One other inclusion here that only applies to the bass charts for some reason is open notes, which is where you strum without any fret buttons. I wish there was more of that just everywhere, but it's good to see it regardless. Moving on to the drums, the idea is generally the same, but with a drum kit instead of a guitar. I don't have one anymore, but from what I remember, the Guitar Hero drums were really heavy-handed. You had to kind of hammer at them a little bit in order for the notes to register. In the modern age of emulation, players have made use of real electronic drum kits, and that seems to be the definitive way to play. Unique to the drums is the foot pedal, which uses the same kind of open note bar as its indicator. This is one of the many things that always turn me off to playing the drums. Trying to coordinate my feet in time with my hands isn't something I particularly excel at. Using guitar pedals is enough of a challenge. That being said, it is good. The charts are good, and the music is good, and, you know, I remember liking how the sticks felt. Do the sticks count is that something that I can pass as like good criticism here? Last part of this whole equation is the vocals. I said earlier that it's just a direct clone of Karaoke Revolution, and I mean that. I haven't covered those games yet, but the idea is simple. Notes are charted to words, and your objective is to match the pitch of the notes as they pass through the strike line. You don't actually have to sing the words, you just have to match the pitch. The more time your little dot spends inside of a note, the more points you earn. There's some lenience for singing too long or stopping just too short. And I'll admit, the vocal charts here are really not that good. Karaoke Revolution didn't nail it the first time either. It took a couple of games to really figure out where the correct pitches were on the highway. In this case, a lot of the charts have the player singing flatter or sharper than the actual song, and that means that it kind of sucks and it's hard to listen to, but if you're drunk and having a karaoke night with your friends, then it's the perfect experience. I actually remember using the Guitar Hero World Tour microphone for some of my earliest YouTube videos from 2011 to 2013. It was better than the Audio-Technica microphone my brother had, and it was substantially better than the built-in laptop microphone, and even most gaming headsets that I had owned at the time. So I think having practical use outside of the game itself definitely adds points in its favor, even if the charts weren't amazing. Visually, this version does not look good, and the emulator does not help, but World Tour has a lot going on. All of the characters and venues have more detail. The notes in the highway have been cleaned up a little to make it feel more sleek. There's a ton of customization, the menus are all improved, and the animated cutscenes are back. Truth be told, I don't think the stages have the same creativity or personality as the previous games. They all kind of roll together with the exception of Ozfest, which is one of the coolest fucking stages in any video game ever. And there are a few extra famous faces here, including Zakk Wylde and the man himself, Ozzy Osbourne. The world really lost something special when he passed. This wasn't the only time Ozzy was immortalized in video game form. He was also the guardian of metal and brutal legend, but this was much more fitting and a much more real way to secure his image in this medium. The port I'm playing, like I said, does not look the best, but it does still hold up really well. I stand that the PS2 long outlived its lifespan specifically because of games like Guitar Hero. This was 2008, the PS3 and Xbox 360 were already in full swing, and this wasn't even the last Guitar Hero to come out for the PS2. I think it was an impressive use of the hardware. The actual soundtrack here is fucking big. I said in the beginning, it's 86 songs and all master recordings, but that's not necessarily what I mean by big here. I mean the genre count is big. There's a huge variety between each setlist, and it's a mix of everything from classic to modern rock, alternative, punk, pop rock, regular pop, and just some more weird alternative indie shit. It's really hard to pin down the genre for every single song in the list because it really is just a lot. If you want to give it a listen, you can play the game, but for convenience, I'll leave a link to the playlist in the description. There is real-world footage here. Damn, I've missed that. In true Guitar Hero fashion, there are some band videos, some behind-the-scenes stuff, and if you've been around for a while, then you know why I think the footage is important. To anybody who plays this game and sees these videos, it's a direct look into the real-world equivalent of the fantasy. In this case, it's not just inspiring for musicians, it's inspiring for potential game developers and designers. It's a close look into an industry that so many players want to break into. Actually being able to see some of what goes into making games can be the turning point for them. They either decide it's too complicated and don't want to pursue, or they think it's way cooler than they could have ever imagined it being. There isn't much of an in-between unless you're already a big studio developer. The greater point here is that doing the things you love and maximizing on how you live life are important. It's important to take time for yourself and do that as much as you can. Finally, I only want to touch on it for a second, but there is a mod for the PC version of World Tour called World Tour Definitive Edition. It fixes a bunch of bugs, adds a bunch of new set lists and custom set list support, adds a lot of in-game customization options for other random shit, and it can essentially be equated to the Thug Pro of Guitar Hero. I will also leave a link to that in the description. With all of that out of the way, I'll go ahead and give Guitar Hero World Tour a rating of 8 out of 10. Mostly because it isn't my personal favorite, but also because there are some frustrating elements that take away from some of the fun. Getting lost in my own decision-making process until I don't feel like playing games anymore is one. Getting frustrated because sometimes the tabs work perfectly fine and other times it feels like they just don't is another. Believe it or not, I think there was room to elevate some of the ideas and still have it constrained in the budget and deadline. Like if the set lists were done in the same way, but reorganized so that some of the main set list songs were in their own little post-game bonus set lists, that probably would have been better. Some kind of post-game or new game plus material. You could take the 20 most difficult of the 86 songs, split them into 1 or 2 set lists, and really push players to their limit as a bonus little, here's this last final grind to the end for your efforts. Putting my own ideas aside, it is still really good as a Guitar Hero game. I know that over the long term, players get fatigued when their formulas don't get much evolution, but I've never been that way. The idea is always, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and in this case, it's the same thing. I think it's still worth playing, and I think it's a great post-mortem memory for Ozzy, so if you somehow haven't played it, then I recommend giving it a shot. It's just more Guitar Hero. If that's what you want, that's exactly what you'll get. Next up, Guitar Hero 5, developed by Budcat and Neversoft in 2009. Before anything else, I've never had one, but I've heard amazing things about the Guitar Hero 5 pack-in guitar. It's essentially just the World Tour guitar with some ergonomic changes. The World Tour guitar, specifically the Wii version of the World Tour guitar, is the ideal first-party controller to use with games like Clone Hero. So the difference here is really how the fret buttons feel in the hands. Stepping away from that, the promotion for this game was really fucking cool. At one point, there was an internet scavenger hunt going on, where players would dig around for the names of the bands online, and if you found one, you could enter that in the official website, and that in turn would enter you into a giveaway for concert tickets. There was also a cool bonus, where if you bought the game during a specific time period, you'd be given a free pre-release copy of Guitar Hero Van Halen. That is fucking cool, dude. I never really owned Guitar Hero 5. Prior to this video, I'd only ever played it a handful of times, and none of them were really long enough to nail down whether I liked it or not. I'm emulating these, so I ran through each of the ports to figure out which one would work the best for this video, and I eventually landed on the Wii port. RPCS3 has graphical bugs that make the flashing lights intolerable, and the audio lags behind. Xenia Canary doesn't recognize my guitar, and the PS2 version of this game is pure booty cheeks, so here we are. The career mode here is a little bit different, but the idea is still the same. Finish a group of songs, unlock more songs, and eventually finish the game. They dialed back some of the ideas from World Tour to give it a more classic vibe, meaning it is linear now again, which was the way it probably should have just stayed anyway, but the set list is still huge at a whopping 85 songs. Let me just put some perspective on this. Every single one of those 85 songs had to be charted for guitar, bass, drums, and vocals. Not only that, they had to be charted for every difficulty for each instrument. That means that there is a rough total of 1,700 charts in this game. World Tour had a lot fucking too, and that's how much work went into just one portion of these games. So when we see the formula not change much, and we see the mechanics only improve a tiny bit, we have to remember that a ridiculous amount of work went into making sure that these games were long and interesting. The gameplay is a lot of the same stuff, so I'll skip over a lot and I'll just talk about what's different. The hit window for notes has been tweaked a little again, and it feels more comfortable now than it ever has. The window for taps is cleaner, and it actually feels like there's ghost input detection this time, and there are some note changes. There are now some more open notes, which is a direct improvement, and there are also now chord hammer-ons and pull-offs to make charts feel more in line with the songs behind them. The old 5-star system is gone, and in its place we've now got a 7-star system, and the progression has taken the Rock Band route of unlocking based on how many stars you have. The vocal portion of the game has been cleaned up a lot, which makes sense because by this point, it's not just one game, but a couple of games in if you count the spin-off titles. Overall though, there really is not much difference here. This is actually the closest to Rock Band that the Guitar Hero series has ever felt. The problem with that is that Rock Band 2 came out a little bit earlier, and that was just objectively the better game. So I, like many others in a similar position, just skipped over this one entirely. It's certainly not bad, it's more Guitar Hero, but it really isn't giving me much to work with here in terms of review content. Visually, I don't like a lot of what this game has going on. The PS3 version is great, but this one isn't. It's almost like a plasticized version of World Tour with some more polygons and some very annoying lighting choices. The stages don't stand out or scream anything memorable. The rockers and customization options are all just okay at best and outright strange at worst, and some of the stage effects screw with my eyes. To its credit, this PS3 version does have my favorite note gems and some of the best highways in the series, but it's all so over flashy that even without photosensitivity problems, it started to make me sick. It's not all bad, but it's not nearly as good as any of the predecessors. The soundtrack is good. It's got the same big-ass variety as before, it's the same scale, but the charts and the songs themselves are a huge cut above like 70% of the World Tour list. One of the most notable tracks is 21st Century Schizoid Man by King Crimson. That song came out in fucking 1969, dude. It's such a classic. If you include the DLC songs, there were packs for Avenged Sevenfold, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Steve Wilmette, Disturbed, Megadeth, Sum 41, and more. The DLC roughly doubles the size of the set list, and I can't think of any charts that sound bad or are poorly made. This is a rhythm game, so the audio is important. What it lacks in other places, it does well to make up for with the music itself. Finally, there is the variety of real-world footage as we usually see, and I am happy to have it back. I don't want to dwell on this one for too long. The long and the short of it is that it's nice to have it, and it helps remind everybody that there is real life behind all of this. If anybody in my audience is an aspiring game developer, I'd recommend going back to check out any and all behind-the-scenes footage you can find from all games. You'll learn a lot. With all that out of the way, I'll go ahead and give Guitar Hero 5 a 7 out of 10. Overall, I don't think it's as good as World Tour, but it's still Guitar Hero. It's still good. It's still much better than most other games. It's just that this one in particular doesn't do anything for me. It isn't as memorable, isn't as personal, and doesn't do enough to make anything really feel elevated. I certainly don't hate it, but if you offer me the choice between playing Guitar Hero 5 or Clone Hero, I'll pick Clone Hero every time. And that's the one real difference between this and the rest of the series. This is just the one time where I wouldn't want to play the original because the limitations from the previous games just don't exist anymore. It's all been hammered into a fine point, and that's okay. But we have a cleaner variant of this game with the same set of ideas now, and that means that this one is totally skippable. Unfortunate, but I still do recommend at least checking it out if you really want to play all of them. I know not everyone is gonna feel the same way I do about this. It's probably a cult classic or something, and I'm gonna get crucified for my not enjoying it as much, but I'm just happy to be done with it. Last up, and probably the most important and interesting game in this set, Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock, developed by Neversoft and published by Activision in 2010. This was, unfortunately, the only mainline Guitar Hero game to not get a PS2 release, which genuinely sucks. I don't count Guitar Hero Live as a mainline game. I barely count that as a part of the same series. So in that spirit, I want to point out that this was the last real Guitar Hero. This is the one that made Activision can the series and eventually dissolve Neversoft. The only time I ever played this game growing up was during a trip to the state over to buy an instrument for my band class. My brother and I stopped in at a little restaurant and there was a Warriors of Rock arcade cabinet. It wasn't any different from any other release of the game, quest mode and all. From everything I can gather, and trust me, I really fucking dug to find this, it's not an official cabinet. So let me be super specific for a second. If anybody in my audience is a restaurant owner from Durango, Colorado, and you once upon a time had a Warriors of Rock arcade cabinet, can you please comment down below where the fuck you got that thing? Like, did you build it yourself? Did you commission it from somebody? Did you just stumble upon it out in the wild? I really want to know, because I've never met and can't find anybody else who has ever played on it, and it's such a distinct memory in my mind. The reception of this game is pretty mid. It's one of the lowest rated and worst received in the series, albeit none of the reviews make out like it's broken, too different, or unplayable, so the most I can assume is it's just another Guitar Hero game. The career mode here is an entirely different beast with a completely new set of ideas. The player now makes way through the quest, and there's a real story fueling the whole thing. The idea in theory is simple. Instead of creating a band and picking from any of the rockers to play each show, the set lists are now divided into individual chapters, focusing on each rocker individually. Everybody has a special kick, some extra personality, and different motivations for wanting to join the crew, and each of the set lists is arranged by genre specifically to fit the style of the character. The idea is to release the demigod of rock, and all of this builds up to one big final showdown with the beast over the song Sudden Death. It's not a guitar battle, it's a boss fight done with Guitar Hero mechanics, and truth be told, I kinda fucking love that. I love all of this. This career is the best in the series, second only to Guitar Hero 3. It's easily the most creative take on the formula. It actually builds on the characters and it gives them a lot of personality. I know some people out there would be like, but it doesn't need all the fluff. And yeah, I guess so, but this is the 6th mainline Guitar Hero, and this was the best possible way to prevent it from feeling repetitive. The reception back in the day claimed that it wasn't doing enough to hook people, and that some of the players outright hated it because it just was the same thing again, and I disagree. Can't please everybody, but I disagree with a lot of the consensus here. I think this career is really a series highlight, and Neversoft did everything they could to keep it fresh. Also, you can unlock the fucking Lich King from Warcraft, dude. I don't play WoW, but I've played Warcraft 3, and I kinda love that inclusion. The gameplay is, by every measure, the cleanest in the series. It's almost identical to 5, with some bug fixes and quality of life improvements. I don't want to dwell on the stuff that stayed the same. It's definitely still Guitar Hero, but at the same time, there are a variety of new ideas and mechanics to talk about, so I'll talk about everything I've seen so far. The first and most simple inclusion is sustained open notes and bass tracks. The second and much more complicated inclusion is powers. Each character has a specific power unique to them that can be upgraded by earning a certain amount of stars, and the powers are no bullshit. They're really some interesting and useful ideas. Speed Freak is a pretty simple multiplier upgrade that applies a constant multiplier to the score meter. It stacks on top of the regular multiplier, so it allows for some much higher than usual scores. Star Power Generator is exactly what it sounds like. Notes beyond a certain streak generate a percentage of star power without having to hit star notes. Crowd Hyper starts the player in the green zone of the fail meter, probably the least useful of all of these. Star Power Amplifier is almost what it sounds like. When it's upgraded, finishing a single star note block will completely fill the star power meter. Again, this is all for the sake of scoring bigger than before. Star Power Nova increases the star power multiplier, and when fully upgraded, it sextuples the multiplier. The multiplier extender is another one that does what it sounds like. When upgraded, it extends the maximum non-star power multiplier up to 6x. The Streak Guardian is essentially overstrum protection. If you miss a note or strum during a chain, you won't lose your streak or multiplier. Upgrading it allows you to miss 2 notes without penalty. Next one needs a little bit more explaining that I'll get to in a minute. The Resurrector power increases the number of ankhs that the player has during a song. Good segue into the third mechanic. Ankhs are essentially extra lives. You get a very limited amount of them, but they're extremely helpful. If you fail a song while you've got ankhs, you'll revive at the exact spot in the song you are playing, with the fail meter recentered. For people who've played Guitar Hero forever, probably not even something you think is necessary. But if this was anybody's first rodeo with Guitar Hero, or any other guitar game, then these extra lives are the best friend that'll make some of the hardest charts not feel so impossible. I like all of this. Honestly, I think it adds so much more overall depth to what was becoming pretty shallow. I'm happy as fuck with the gameplay here, and I don't understand how anybody could say that this didn't do enough. It did a ton. Visually, it doesn't really matter which port you play this time. Like, yes, it's a given that the PS3 and the Xbox 360 ports look better, but the Wii port still looks really good, and it actually keeps the better looking note gems. One of the biggest criticisms that this game gets is that there aren't any real artist likenesses or appearances as characters, and yes, I get how that's disappointing. But here's the thing. The band, No Doubt, is solely responsible for that decision. After the release of Band Hero, No Doubt put out a lawsuit claiming Activision violated their image by allowing Gwen Stefani to sing songs outside of the No Doubt setlist. If that sounds like bullshit, it's because it is. In Guitar Hero World Tour, you can play as Hayley Williams and sing any fucking song you want in the setlist. Precedent was set. If you licensed your likenesses to Guitar Hero, then you were gonna become an unlockable, playable character for all of it. They fucking absolutely knew what they were getting into. They dragged dragged this lawsuit out for a few years, which ultimately meant Activision was literally unable to license musicians' likenesses, and that, we can blame all of this on them, pretty much. That being said, the mainline characters all look really good, and it's not like they didn't want artists. Really, I can't blame the game for the actions of a band that probably didn't even play the games that they signed their likeness rights away to. Characters aside, the stages all look good. They still don't have the same personality as the first three, like it would have been really hard to capture that feeling, but they're better than World Tour with the exception of Ozfest, and they're better than 5 just overall. Even better, a lot of the most annoying effects that 5 used are gone or cleaned up regardless of what version you're playing. If you've got photosensitivity problems, but you can handle the original Guitar Hero trilogy, then in this case the Wii port should be perfectly fine. It's almost never too hard to look at, and it cuts away a few more of the effects that the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions use that might trigger an issue. One really cool touch to this game is that the cutscenes that introduce each character, as well as the transformation scenes, are kind of just sprinkled everywhere. It's not the traditionally animated stuff from the previous games, and truthfully, I think that's okay. Guitar Hero 5 had really shitty animation. It didn't cut it close to any of the previous games, so if the compromise was better animation and cutscenes by sacrificing the traditional art, I'm okay with that. The soundtrack is awesome. 93 songs packed on disc, and this time around, the alternative and indie shit from the previous 2 games is pretty much gone. We've gone back to a hard focus on rock and metal, with only a couple of breakaways thrown in here and there. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, Warriors of Rock was compatible with DLC from World Tour, Smash Hits, 5, Band Hero, and Metallica, albeit only 5 and Band Hero did that for free. The others were importable as a sort of early microtransaction. That being said, if you had all of the 5 and Band Hero DLC, you had 300 tracks available to play immediately at game launch, which is fucking incredible. This is easily one of my favorite set lists in the whole series. It's full of just as many iconic songs as it is low-key songs. They're all master recordings, and I couldn't find anything that was mischarted. Putting that to the side, this game might not have artist likeness appearances, but that doesn't mean we don't get any guest appearances. Gene Simmons is the voice of the narrator. If you've only ever listened to Kiss, you probably wouldn't recognize it, but if you ever saw Gene Simmons' Family Jewels, then you'll recognize it right away. Beyond all of that, this game has one extremely important inclusion: Rush 2112. This 7-part behemoth takes up an entire set list, and it comes with its own special narration that gives us some more information. This is where we learn that this game isn't just some random amalgam of heavy metal covers spun into a story. This game's story is literally 2112. The whole thing has been building up to this, so to hear the actual story narrated by members of Rush is crazy. This is fucking awesome, dude. Worth every second. Finally, there is real-world footage, as is true to form for games like this. We get some behind-the-scenes stuff, some band stuff, and it fits in with the rest of the series really well. These ones aren't as long, they aren't as insightful, they still hold the same weight and purpose. In the modern age where the internet dominates and everybody has content related to everything, these are easy to pass off as just more stuff in the pile. But these came from the end of an era where our limitations far outweighed our capabilities. This was before the age of information really took form and exploded outward. This was the era when the most prolific Guitar Hero creators of today were literally just kids filming TVs in their bedrooms. People talk about AI producing slop like it's uncommon, but it's just copying us. Creators produce so much fucking slop content, so having high quality insight into parts of the video game industry is a rarity, and every single Guitar Hero video is a prime example. They really did it right. With all of that out of the way, I'll go ahead and give Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock a rating of 9 out of 10. I don't agree with the critics from the time. I don't think this was stale or stagnant. This is something that I'm going to start referring to as Proving Ground Syndrome. Proving Ground Syndrome is, unfortunately, something that Neversoft had to experience twice, and it works like this. A long-running series with a good formula starts to feel a little stale, and one really bad game puts a bad taste in the mouth of players. For the Tony Hawk series, that was Project 8. For the Guitar Hero series, that was Guitar Hero 5. In both of these cases, the games that immediately followed them were infinitely better in both ideas and execution. Unfortunately, the fatigue from the previous games unleashed itself like a ravenous wolf on a dying moose. The excellence of both games was essentially ignored, and both were labeled soulless rehashes when that definitely wasn't the case. I don't think Warriors improved as much as Proving Ground did, and I don't think it's even as good of a game necessarily, but it's damn close, and I feel bad for Neversoft because this was the second time something truly fucking awesome got shafted because the previous entry wasn't that good. These weren't series-killing entries by any means. Neversoft threw down the most creativity possible to make sure that these games weren't flat. This game came with 93 songs. 93 songs each charted for 4 different instruments, all of which have 5 difficulties. That's 1,860 charts. The tremendous amount of weight that Neversoft was carrying while they were making these games is unfucking believable. And this one in particular had the most charts, the most story elements, the best mechanics, and the second best ending. So the fact that the high quantity didn't outweigh the quality is impressive. I feel bad because I skipped on both this and Guitar Hero 5 in favor of the Rock Band series. Do I think this is a better game than Rock Band 3? No, not really, but I do think it stood really strong as an equal. I would have happily sunk a ton of time into it. I recommend checking it out if you're into Guitar Hero games and you've never played it before, because it's really good. And I also recommend checking it out if you're a fan of the 2112 album, because even if you've never played video games and it's just this random one-off thing where you're like, yeah, I want to do that, it's worth it. It's really good. Now that I'm done with all of that, I really need to think of something smaller to make a video about, because this was fucking enormous. I wanted this one to be zen and something simple that I could just talk through easily, but I forgot just how complex the Guitar Hero games actually are. I've been playing Guitar Hero for 20 years, so it's safe to assume that I'm blind to most of it unless I'm actually paying attention. Let my experience get the better of me here, and ended up with a video that is much longer than I anticipated, and I'm sorry about that, but that's okay though. I'm happy I did it. I don't have a lot of time to make videos, and I don't have any money to put into better equipment, so if you want to support the channel and help make these videos better, a link to donate is in the description. Huge thank you to everybody, whether you made it this far or not, whether you're returning or new, whether you absolutely hate guitar games or they're your favorite thing in the world. Thank you for just being here. If the day comes where I ever can't make videos again, I'll get to look back on how awesome all of you are and how much fun I've had covering all of the games I've covered. So until next time, thank you, and have a nice day.